Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. It's been a little while, but I've been very busy moving places, and as you will see, I will be recording this video from an entirely new room. This will now be my new streaming room, so yeah, you'll have to get used to it, but I'm going to be back now with making some videos, starting with one of my own, replays against none other than B-Man. And what this will feature is some Fortress action, starting with Hounds and Steel Balls on my end. One of my favorite packs of the patch for sure. It's just ultra solid. Hounds haven't really been touched. So if you are comfortable, once again, playing more aggressively with Hounds and Crawlers, I would recommend you to try it out. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I set up on the left side of the board because I do not want to push into that magnetic barricade. And I kind of use a classic formation that I like for some mid-range Hound action. So if you can see here, the Hound will be one square from the flank, and then Crawler's right behind. And over here, the Crawler is sticking out one square behind the tower with the Hound in front. Steel Balls are going to be in between. And, well, that is how our initial setup is going to look. What this allows you to do is that as long as you don't put anything in front of here, a Sledgehammer flank with a Crawler in front will pull an enormous amount of enemy units, and it really opens up this diagonal for the tower push. Now, B-Man here is a quick supply specialist. He decides to play in the middle with a ball Arclight opener, and I think he purchases 3 Crawlers. So he does use 150 of his 200 bonus resources. And then for me, I am going to be a Typhoon specialist. So honestly, ultra solid pack here, 4,400 hit points, which is plenty. And Typhoon spec, much like Rhino spec, gives you a ton of resources, lots of power on round 4. So the fact that you get to start with what, in my opinion, is one of the better starter packs out there with Ball Hound is really, really a premium. I will end up losing here on round 1. Arclight's a little bit too powerful, but that's not really that big of a deal. Round number 2, I'm mostly looking at the spells. I mean, you often should. These blue spells are very hard to deal with on round 2, and they provide incredible value throughout the game because 3-round cooldown, you're likely to see them back. So I'm not too surprised here that B-Man does pick the Wasp Swarm. For myself, I mean, I have to think a little bit about, you know, do I want to invest into an anti-Wasp unit, or would I rather just pick the spell and hope that my Wasps win out? And I went for the second option here. I don't really want to purchase Arclight or a Mustang into a board of Crawlers and Arclights. That doesn't sound very good to me. And I don't really want to buy Fangs here either. So I go for the Wasp Swarm instead. Also, the Rhino might walk into some Steel Balls, which is not a good matchup. So it seemed like this spell had the most value. I'm going to go for a Crawler all the way in the back. That should distract most of the Wasp options. I level up one of my towers and I actually buy a Wasp myself. You'll often hear me say that on round 2, you will very, very likely want to buy some anti-air. And mostly that's going to be something like a Phoenix, but in certain scenarios you can buy a Wasp as well. And in this case, buying my own Wasp should hopefully give me a bit of an advantage if my opponent happens to pick the spell they did. Now, sadly, my own aggressive play doesn't work out. B-Man goes for Double Fang behind the tower, and with the help of his Wasps, he is able to deal with mine. I still have some left, though, on the left side, and hopefully we can break through and at least even the playing field here on round 2 and not take too much damage. There is even a scenario where I might win, but that kind of depends on whether or not my Wasps end up, you know, having some good trades with the enemy Wasps. And the way that things are looking, I don't think that's going to be the case. My Wasps split up in a bit of an awkward manner. I do get the tower debuff, which we trade as B-Man Steel Balls grab my second tower. And because my Wasps are split here, I don't think they will end up winning. So sadly, round 2 here, not as successful as maybe we would have hoped. But it's somewhat fine, considering, well, we haven't lost too many hit points. And I think that the power spike of this type of mid-range comp really lies around, you know, the end of the early game. So let's say round 4, thereabouts, because that's when you can actually have the money to go for these aggressive flanks, pull away the enemy units, and still have enough on your main board to threaten tower takes. So that's what when you should be looking to start maybe winning some rounds. Don't be too worried about losing early on. That's perfectly fine. Round number 3, unit reinforcements. B-Man decides to go for the Phantom Ray. I do the same. I kind of thought he might go for the Marksman here because it seemed like a good response into either Phantom Ray or Phoenix. Now, why do I go for Phantom Ray? Because I think it's a little bit tankier. Or well, it just simply is tankier than something like a Phoenix, and it can be a bit tricky to kill, even for level 2 Marksman. So I felt like with the Death Ball I'm creating, and here you can see that flank being put to action, the Phantoms can sometimes provide better support for the Steel Balls and Hounds than something like a Phoenix might. So that's why I went for it. Marksman doesn't make sense in my case. They're not fast enough to really contribute. But B-Man goes for the Oil Bomb on the Phantom Rays. And I think he sold his level 2 Phantom Ray to repurchase a level 1, which is somewhat weird. I wouldn't recommend you to do that. I think it's perfectly acceptable to just keep the Phantom Ray. And it's a fine play, but I think the Marksmen are just a little bit more versatile, or at least a little bit safer there. Whereas the Phantom Rays are not going to help you cover the anti-air, for one. And two, well, they are going to be somewhat vulnerable if you put them up front to put down that oil. So round number 3 immediately here, looking quite good. I haven't found the money yet to range my Hounds, but that would be what is next on my list. Especially because B-Man has found the money to range his arc lights. So while his anti-air situation isn't great here because of his pick, he has managed to get ahead in the Chaflier fight. And that means that I am somewhat forced here to spend my next round ranging the Hounds. I do win, if only barely. It is just going to be the Phantom Rays surviving, but that is plenty, and it looks like they will even have the experience here to level up, which is a big deal. If you can get those Phantom Ray levels to start going, level 3, level 4, suddenly you're talking about a lot of hit points that need to be dealt with in the air, and some units might struggle. Low-level Mustang, low-level Marksman might not have the damage required to efficiently get rid of the Phantom Ray. Round number 4, Shield Airdrop here gets picked up, mainly because Incendiary Bomb was offered, and, well, this is one way that you can block the fire, at least partially, because you can put that airdrop shield a little bit further up than you would be able to put any other shields. Looks like B-Man, though, is going to place his fire relatively conservatively, and most of it should still land. But yeah, I'm trying to cover for my Hounds in this case, which I do range, and you can see the classic Hound staircase now being formed. This is the type of board that you should be aiming for whenever you're playing this type of composition, right? So by round 4, ideally 5 Hounds, maybe some with levels, grab range, have this type of sledge flank going, and you just play for kind of one main army or one main group of steel balls plus air unit. In this case, the Phantom Ray, but it can sometimes also be a Phoenix. Right side now also being defended by Phantom Rays, but I think he positioned that pretty far back, so his tower pressure is not amazing, and I'm not really too worried about this. I do need to put something there to hopefully catch those Phantom Rays, but I'm not worried at all about my right side tower here, and that is not something that you should be doing as the defender. I think generally speaking, you should always try and make the aggro player as uncomfortable as possible. So you can do that by pressuring their tower and positioning more aggressively, sometimes even starting your own aggressive push on the opposite side of the board. You can also do this through spells, but, you know, aside from something like the oil, which is available at all times, you cannot guarantee that you'll get access to something like fire. So round number 4, very successful there as we now enter the mid game. And here again comes some spells. We have quick teleport. I could go for that, but I already have one flank where I put units. And I think generally speaking, you shouldn't be looking to put more than 2 deployments on flanks if you can avoid doing so. There are some exceptions in the late game, but, you know, it's usually you're going to be better off if it's just there to form a distraction instead of trying to, you know, make some type of main army on a flank. B-Man decides to go for the Wasp Swarm. It's good value. I think I should probably pick it here as well, which I do, adding some more Wasps to the field. Again, my opponent hasn't really dealt with my air units that well, so, you know, grabbing more of them in the form of this spell seemed like a decent idea. I'm going to place them very safely on the right. The idea was to catch out those Phantom Rays. The Fangs are very slow, so they won't be able to help out, and Phantom Rays are very bad at dealing with Wasps. Aside from that, we have some money left, and I mean, at this point I can kind of do whatever, really. I could honestly just buy more chaff, more hounds, maybe even a second hound tech at this point. I'm in a very comfortable spot. I'm healthy. Last round looked good for me, so anytime you're in this type of spot, it makes sense to start teching your chaff clear even further, especially when it's something like hound, which can become semi-carry in the mid or late game if you manage to get the levels. So I decided to go for chamber compression. Reason being is that chamber compression can be quite good against things like arclights and steel balls, and it'll help kind of even out your DPS in a way. My opponent didn't have a ton of chaff, so Mech Rage didn't seem necessary, and I can always go for that as a third tech later on if I want. This round, Arclights seem to be doing a bit better. I'm actually struggling somewhat to get towards that tower on the left. More oil has been put down through those Phantoms, and yeah, my steel balls are really not managing to get anything done. So that is the power of, you know, those oil slicks. I also lose one of my missiles as those blue steel balls manage to catch them, and it looks like I'll end up losing this round. So, bit of a conservative play from me. I didn't go for a new threat on the board. I just made sure that my hounds had a second tech, and, you know, I lose a little bit of hit points for it. But I stall, and by stalling, I can, you know, create some time for the unit drops to come around. Any time that you have the luxury of playing it safe and kind of playing conservatively, it usually works out best for you, because then you will have the unit drop to kind of inform what type of carry or what type of unit you might want to add to your composition, considering that the unit drop will give you, you know, stuff for free. You know, a higher level Phoenix than you might be able to purchase normally, or, you know, the unlock of a Vulcan or a level 3 Scorpion. And that just really helps to kickstart the rest of your comp. Now, here I decided to go for the Phoenix because the Phoenix beats all of the other unit drops, and I was kind of lacking DPS, so I was quite happy to go into the Phoenixes here. I had a bit of an idea that maybe I could go into Phantom Ray carry, but it didn't seem that wise. I do have range, but I think Phantom Ray carry is best if you manage to hit that extended range Phantom Ray card, and, well, if I'm offered a level 4 Phoenix, you know, why play, you know, some type of difficult line? You know, just play towards the unit drop, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. The Wasp is back off cooldown. I decided to pressure that right side tower because it's relatively exposed, and I can go for another one of these flanks. You will see that there is some space between where the sledgehammer is and where the crawler is. The reason for this is that this just pulls more units, because these crawlers will be further down, so this Arclight will be closer to the crawlers and will also turn, including anything else that might be over there. And you can see literally everything gets pulled. Only one Fang there decides to move forward, but with the Wasp Swarm and the Phoenix Beacon, I should be able to make it in. The Phoenix will even target that Arclight, get rid of it, and hopefully we'll grab a tower debuff very soon. Looks like we will. That Phoenix is now locked on. There we go. 9 seconds of debuff. So now I'm starting to create basically a second offense on the right side of the board. Left side is strong enough, but I felt like the right side was quite weak, and this is something that will often be enabled through the unit drops. Those extra deployments can just, you know, kickstart a new attack on a side of the board where your opponent might be weak. So I catch my opponent off guard. I do somehow still kind of end up losing here, though. I mean, I have one level 3 Phantom Ray left, and hopefully it can kill the remaining level 1 Phantom Rays, but, you know, this is where I realize that my anti-air isn't that good either. So before the next round even starts, I have made up my mind about what I want to do, which is to invest into more Phoenixes and give them range. And yeah, look at that, right? My hounds are all slowed down because of all of these oil slicks that stick around for the entirety of the round. And I lose. Or, well, I don't lose. I have a couple hero Fangs, but I don't deal as much damage as I would have liked, considering I did grab a 9-second debuff. Round number 7, nothing too interesting here. I mean, there is an enhancement module, and I actually end up picking it. The reason I do so is because I had levels on my steel balls, and the steel balls weren't performing that well. My opponent took a scorpion, they were getting slowed down by the oil. I just felt like it was better getting rid of them. And with the enhancement module, I can probably repurpose it later to start buying some giants and make even more profit. And I also will make a little bit of money back by leveling and selling those steel balls, for free. So there we go, steel balls with the enhancement module. And I now range my phoenixes. I buy them in at level 2. Kind of an important thing to do once you start reaching, level or round 7. End of the mid game. At that point, especially 100 and 200 cost units are just not going to cut it anymore at level 1. If you want them to be your main source of DPS or chaff clear, it is often wise to buy them in at level 2, at least in my opinion, and it's something that I do rather often. So this time around, you can see that the anti-air is a lot better. My phoenixes stay safe, the wasps on the left get a tower debuff, and I will be able to win this time with a few more units alive and without having to stress about, can half a Fang pack actually clear the enemy air units. So a good result, and now B-Man dips below 2k, even below 2.5. And this is where the late game begins. So here, I think to myself, I did just range my phoenixes. It is likely that my opponent will try to buy fortresses with anti-air because that is just a very common play. Efficient giant manufacturing is offered, which might enable that play even more. So that is what I was gearing towards. I also see that my opponent has Arclights on the board, some steel balls with no techs, some void eyes, and I felt like going into fortress myself was a pretty good idea as well. Because the thing is, if my opponent decides to go for fortress anti-air, which they do, they'll be behind one tech in the mirror. And that could be painful for them if I decide to just immediately tech into combat-oriented fortresses. So what you see me do here is buy the fortresses, go for barrier instantly. I also do this because the fire was back off cooldown, and I might be able to block part of it this way. And barriers in general are very, very powerful on aggro because you can defend all of your units from getting missiled. So this missile right here, that's actually mine, but if my opponent decides to try and, get rid of these crawlers at some point, they won't be able to do so through a missile. And the barrier should give me a little bit of an advantage in the mirror. I should have picked up the efficient giant manufacturing. I actually realized this on the given turn because I decided to buy 3 fortresses, which immediately pays back for this card, and I will likely buy more fortresses later on, so that is a mistake by me. I kind of made a quick decision on the cards before I decided to buy more fortresses, and I should have realized that I was going to buy giants here, especially with my enhancement module from earlier. So, bit of a mistake. Opponent here does manage to take out one of my fortresses. The awkward bit is that when the fortresses shoot those Void Eyes with the EMP armor, their barrier gets disabled for, 4 seconds, I think it is. And that kind of nullifies the whole benefit of having that tech. So down the line, I probably do want photon coating, but for now I thought it was kind of fine, and if I have enough chaff, then the fortresses should be able to recover from the, short duration of EMP from those Void Eyes. And left side does really well, right side somewhat even, couple of units still left, but I do have those phoenixes to help me out, and there's no fortresses left on the enemy team, so Fort AA is not there to scam my air units. We get a tower debuff, and now we just have to clean up the remainder of the wasps, as well as this blue arc light on the right. Both of us here are loaning, it is round 8, and now begins kind of the late phase of the game. Whenever you have giants, you want to buy more. Assault Fortress shows up here. It was a consideration. Advanced Power System, same thing, very good. I decided to greed by going for the intensive training. I had a fortress level available. I had the enhancement module available. So I decided to make a level 3 fortress for free. And considering I was quite healthy, I felt like I could go for this play. because, you know, if somehow I stumble upon some issues, my opponents start making a bit of a comeback, I'll have, you know, the economic advantage later on by picking this intensive training. Also, I noticed I had the wrong techs for this type of playstyle equipped on my fortresses. I had been experimenting a little bit with the new Solid Shot tech as well as Elite Marksman, which is a long-range fortress build, and it doesn't do as well in these aggressive scenarios. I would much rather have the tech bar that B-Man has with range and launcher overload. So I was a bit afraid because I knew I was ahead in terms of, you know, techs. I had combat techs and he had clicked anti-air barrage, which makes his other techs more expensive. But in terms of combatability, having the elite here is not amazing. If I can get some levels, it'll be better than range at some point. But I don't have, you know, the attack speed with launcher overload, and I can't really click solid shots here because even though it gives me even more range, that is not a stat I need right now. I need to be able to get through the enemy forces as quick as possible. So I was a little bit afraid and I didn't know if I would be okay. The one thing I do have going for me is that I have a hound-based board, which is a lot better here than the arc lights on the enemy team. The hounds just skill much better. They're more annoying to kill because it's a group of 5 units, and generally speaking, their chaff clear speed will be faster as well. So I knew I had that advantage, and I thought, well, maybe if I can, you know, leverage those hounds, the enhancement module, the intensive training, I may still be able to kind of get away with the fact that mirror-wise, I think B-Man is in a better spot. Left side here doing really well. I do get locked onto first, but because my fortress is so high level, it is just able to tank the level 1 fortress for as long as it does, and then retaliate. Eventually, though, it will go down, and now I start taking some damage, right? But we took some insurance. We expected that this might happen, and at least I have that intensive training to help me out. Round number 10, more unit reinforcements. I wasn't looking for anything in specific, but the Wraith looked quite nice. Again, my opponent doesn't have great anti-air. He's relying on, you know, phantoms with few levels, no range. Forte A, which is not the best into very tanky units, like the Wraith. And the Wraith can also body block here for my strongest Phoenix. Keep in mind, I have clicked Quantum Reassembly. I really like this tech. I think it's become a bit of a staple for a lot of HIMAR players. And as long as you can keep one Phoenix alive and then kill all the fortresses, you'll basically just regenerate your entire army of Phoenixes with your opponent having no way of dealing with them. And considering I had already ranged them, it didn't seem sensible to try and get rid of the Phoenixes. I would rather click the second tech, which is quite cheap still, and try and get some value out of that. I decided to triple tech my hounds now because I had a feeling that my chaff clearing speed wasn't quick enough. So that's what I decided to go for. On top of that, I have a lot of hound levels, and again, hounds can become somewhat of a carry of their own, given enough levels and techs, and well, that's what I decided to go for. Some more hounds as well on the right side here to help out this fortress. My opponent uses a wasp very aggressively, which I don't really have anything for, or at least I think he did that last round and it distracted these Phoenixes. So this time I decided to put my Wasp a bit more up front to try and deal with a similar play because the second Wasp drop came off a cooldown. My opponent goes for a similar type of play here on the left with the Wraith, but instead tries to run it into my tower. And here I'm just hoping that I get in quick enough, or at least get rid of enough of the enemy forces before the debuff comes through inevitably. It looks like we're doing kind of fine. My right side corner fortress does get locked on very quickly still. And I think it had partially something to do with those EMP Void Eyes turning off the barrier. So in the future round, I was looking to just get Photon Coating and probably get it through the Farseers and, you know, make sure that I can't get EMP'd at the start of the round. Still, we're doing well. Right side even manages to win. You can see the Phoenixes now coming back to try and deal with this Wraith. And I have 2 fortresses on the left side being alive. I didn't have any levels available on my fortresses sadly last round, but even if I did, I don't think I would have sold this one fortress. This is one of those scenarios where this one high-level fortress is really holding my army together, making sure that I have some pressure on one side of the board. It's so high level that the enemy fortresses couldn't deal with it, and it's been consistently winning for me. So I wouldn't be selling this, even though I could make some profit, because I wouldn't be able to replace it with anything better, really. Intensive training back off cooldown. I decided to pick up an amplifying core. I think my opponent does the same. Very powerful on something like Fortress because it uses both the hit points and the attack very well. And here, I mean, again, I would have loved to have something like Range and Overload, but I don't. So I'm likely kind of stuck at this point buying more fortresses. I'm pretty happy to keep the Wraith. It's not answered. Until I see an answer, I'm going to keep it there because it helps out with the chaff clear, and again, it tanks for a decent amount of time. Opponent, though, starting to now catch up on techs, has Range and Overload, aside from that anti-air barrage, and one of his fortresses is level 4, which, you know, beats my fortresses. I only have a level 3, and I do not outrange or outdamage that. So I have to somehow be able to overwhelm him with chaff and chaff clear to be able to win this. And I still thought I might be able to do that. I have clicked second attack enhancement here. I think I did that a while ago. I have talked about that in the past. Very, very powerful thing to try and pick up those second attack and defense enhancements. And they do truly benefit your army as a whole. Specifically, the hounds here love to have the bonus damage. And here we go. It just comes down at this point about who can chaff clear the fastest, and, well, I did mention that these hounds are very annoying to deal with. And so what you can see happen is that I lock on to his fortresses first, because some of my hounds get in the way of the arc lights, and the arc lights don't clear them fast enough. They can clear the crawlers when the barriers are gone, but they can't get rid of those hounds efficiently. That was just a fortress one-shotting my level 1 fortress, by the way, but we thankfully do get rid of it in time. I do have these level 5 phoenixes on the right side, and they are DPSing like crazy. They're top on damage in the round, top on damage overall, having dealt 400,000 damage. And yeah, pretty happy about how things are going. All my fortresses have gone down, though. And it just comes down to these phoenixes, but there's not enough of them to finish the game, and we'll have to send it to round number 12. So now you're starting to sweat, like, oh, is there a way that my opponent can somehow stabilize this? Is there a way that the Range and Overload is going to start outscaling now? We'll have to see. B-Man goes for another improved firepower control system. There's a steel wall production line available as well, which could be picked up. I don't think it's worth going for Rhino Assault at this point. Both of our back lines are well defended, and the Rhino would just get popped immediately. Fire is back, though. And I do not run Sprinkler. I don't think I would have clicked it even if I did run it, because it would have been my 4th tech. And really, I don't think I care too much. I do have some fortresses with the bubbles, so if we walk up a little bit even, we'll also block part of that fire. And yeah, so far it hasn't really seemed to be that big of a problem for me. Here we go. We go for the Farseers finally. I didn't go for it last round. I bought more fortresses instead. But now I decide that those Void Eyes, he has bought more of them, are becoming pesky. It's a tech that has been popping up a lot recently. I'm not a big fan of it, but I do think it's very powerful. And yeah, we just have to play around that. So here we go. I decided to beacon backwards this right side because I thought he would try and put the fire over here. I guess wrong, as he actually puts it on the other side of the board. And another Farseer. I don't know why I want to say Phantom Ray. I guess because they are in this game, or they have been used. Another Phantom Ray on the left, 2 on the right. Try and cover as many of my units as possible. And we in fact cover all of them there. And that way, at least when we shoot at those Void Eyes, we won't be disabled. The Hounds won't lose their techs, and the Fortresses won't lose it either. Seems to be somewhat even still, but now you can see the difference in chaff clear if you look from above. There's no chaff left really for my opponents, but I still have those couple hounds sitting in front of my fortresses, protecting them, giving me the advantage I need to get those lock-ons first. And that is exactly what happens here. Now this fortress level 5 with improved and full teched does fight back valiantly, But with the help of the Phoenixes and this Wraith, which has been tanking admirably, keeping those Phoenixes alive for a little bit longer, I do manage to close out the game after 12 rounds of play. And thankfully, my wrong tech bar setup did not come to haunt me in this one. Pretty cool game. Again, it does use that flexible, right, Hound staircase that you've seen me talk about. You've seen me play multiple times, and it just, yeah, it's the best thing currently. Chaff clear is fantastic. Once you get to those, you know, double techs, you get the levels. Crawlers are still super powerful. They didn't get nerfed. I didn't click Subterranean Blitz this game, but I could have at some point, especially with second defense enhancement, and it just trickles through in such an annoying manner. The whole thing pairs nicely with a lot of different giant carries. In this game, I decided to go for the Fortress. I think it helped that I was expecting him to go for Fortress Anti-Air in response to my Phoenix play, and therefore I could get ahead by just going into the Fortresses immediately, but skip the Anti-Air and go for combat techs instead. Either way, if you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.